it sounds a fun topic, an interesting topic. I always have no problem when it comes to talking about ransomware because we see so much of it happening all the time in a various number of industries. So as Ron mentioned, I'm James McGuiggan. I'm a security awareness advocate with KnowBe4. We used to say evangelist, and I think a lot of folks still like using the term evangelist. It gives that preachiness tone to it, but advocate is, working towards getting the word out, making sure people understand cybersecurity and cybersecurity awareness, and working towards, having that security culture. I'm also a adjunct professor at the college here in Orlando, so working towards getting that next generation of security professionals ready for the world and out there. I also spent 18 years working at Siemens, worked in the energy division, but I had a lot of friends that worked in healthcare and still have a lot of friends that work in the cyber aspects of healthcare. So always keeping my finger on the pulse and see what's going on with all of them out there. You've probably heard of KnowBe4, but if you haven't, we do security awareness and training programs. We have thousands of different training programs that are available for specific industries and for different people within the organization. Been around about 11 years. We also do the phishing assessments as well. And one of the things that drew me to working at KnowBe4 was their mission statement, which is essentially, helping organizations deal with the ongoing issue of social engineering. But for me, more importantly, it's helping employees, but honestly helping people make smarter security decisions every day. And that for me is key. So when we talk about social engineering, we talk about the attacks. And Bob mentioned it earlier with regards from Huntress with regards to the different attack methods, but we see these breaches that are going on all the time, all the ransomware attacks and everything else, but we're also seeing the cost of spending going up, which is good. But I'm curious whether or not the spending comes in as a reactive measure after an organization's been unfortunately breached, or it's happening beforehand. And so that's kind of, we're not with this particular chart, but we're expecting the number of breaches to go up and the number of the amount of spending that's going to go up as well. But when we look at the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report from last year, we see that social engineering up there about 40%, miscellaneous errors underneath that. And a lot of times, and I've been in meetings, I've been at conferences, presentations, even the other night, we were talking about the social engineering and the different attack vectors that go on. And somebody made the comment that, yeah, humans are the weakest link. And I had to disagree with that. Yeah, we always say that humans are the weakest link because they're high value targets and cyber criminals love going after them. But to me, humans are the biggest attack vector. They're largely targeted because of the fact that they don't have the awareness. It's something that's missing in society. People know about cybersecurity and are aware of it, but they're not taking the necessary actions to make sure that they're keeping aware, they're keeping up to date. They think that, oh, it can't happen to me. We've got firewalls, we got routers, we should be protected, when that whole, those concepts was what ends up falling into that victim profile. Now, when we look at a breakdown in the spending, we see, 50% to network, because you got to have the routers and the switches and the firewalls, got to get the communication going. You've got web and the identity access management, that's in about 15%. And then you've got your endpoints in there as well. But there at the far end on the right side, 3%, less than 3% is what gets spent on the human. When in fact, 40% of the attacks that are coming in is because of social engineering against the human, but we're only spending 3% of the cybersecurity budget. So to me, there's a bit of a gap there, because ransomware isn't going anywhere. Cyber Ventures put out a report, and they're always reporting about ransomware, but $265 billion is kind of expected sometime in the next 10 years. And we're rapidly climbing up there towards that. So hopefully, the improvements with ransomware can occur, and with all of you attending today, that's certainly one particular step. So I'm going to look at ransomware right now. I'm just going to touch upon it briefly. We've heard a little bit already where we are with ransomware. I'm going to talk about recovery real quick, but then I want to get into the prevention aspect when we're looking at what it takes to protect your organization. So when we look at what the spending is, this is on a website called ransomwareclock.org. This is a colleague of mine through ISC Squared. He's got this website, and it's got great facts and information. So if you're trying to put together a business case for security awareness training, or for any other type of hardware technology trying to protect against ransomware, this number is constantly going up. And what are we sitting at? About $16.5 billion right now. We know business email compromise sits upwards of about 30 billion, but ransomware is the flashy one. It's the one that gets on the news. It's the one that we hear about when it comes to the healthcare system, education, and so forth. So this number is still going up. Every 10 seconds, 11 seconds, a new organization's getting hit. Pretty well, it's upwards of several millions of dollars to handle remediation. So, we can either spend the $2 million on the back end recovering, and there's insurance and everything else that goes out there, or we can put the $2 million and get some really amazing security awareness training and programs in place for the users. When it comes to ransomware, I have a Google alert that sets up every day to let me know what's going on. And it's always 3 pages long with articles coming in. This is from yesterday because it's when I put together the presentation, but I update it every time I do my presentations on ransomware. But these are the ones from yesterday, and you can easily go out and do a Google search and see them. Yesterday, it was focusing on education. Other times I'm seeing healthcare in there as well. So, we know that the healthcare industry is constantly being targeted for ransomware attacks. When we look at the HIMSS report from last year, we see phishing attacks are pretty well the most common type of attacks that healthcare organizations have been hit with. They're still the number one, and that out of those phishing attacks, those social engineering attacks, we're seeing ransomware and business email compromise being the outcome for that. It's all in the news. We see it every day with regards to vendors being hit, different organizations being hit, lawsuits now coming against them relating to people's misfortunes being in the hospital when they're hit with a ransomware attack. So, it's in the news. We know it's evident, and we know it's out there. When we look at ransomware, it's doing so much nowadays. It used to be a hit and run kind of thing. They'd be in and out in half an hour. Next thing you know, we're dealing with ransomware. Now they're stealing patient information, employee databases, intellectual property, anything they can use to extort, to publicly shame the organization, leaking the data. We've even got remote access as a service where you can, if you don't have the technology capabilities on the dark web, off you go, and you can be hiring somebody to do the work for you. And of course, they're targeting through phishing and the unpatched software. 130 different cyber criminal groups that are out there right now. Lots of activity. One of the habits I have and research that I'm doing also right now around ransomware is spending weekends on the dark web, looking at the different groups, seeing who they've hit, and it's not stopping anytime soon, unfortunately. Bob touched upon this. RDP and phishing was pretty well the two big ways folks are getting in, the cyber criminal groups. Software vulnerabilities, unpatched software, we're seeing that as well. All right, so you get hit with ransomware, which, it's going to be a bad day for everybody. You've got several options that you can do. You can recover from backup. You can decrypt it using a service, and there's plenty of services out there. NoMoreRansom.org. You could do nothing, lose all the data, move forward, don't want to pay them. You're just basically going to wipe it all and start all over, or you end up negotiating and paying the ransom. Those are pretty well one of your 4 choices that you can make at that point. There's probably go into a little more granular after that, but bottom line is you want to wipe the system. You want to make sure that it's not containing any other additional malware. There could be other remnants left over with regards to the software that may have been part of the dropper or in the ransomware. But basically wiping the systems is pretty well the way to go with it. You've 6 different things to do, or 8 different things that you can do. I've been updating these slides lately. Train your users. I'm going to go into that in just a minute. Make sure you got your backups. Segment your network, defense in depth. Principle of least privilege. Don't have everybody have access to all the critical data. Remove that internet-facing RDP. Keep up with your software updates. Run your incident response and your tabletop exercises focusing on ransomware, and get everybody at the table that needs to be there, who's making the decision on whether you're gonna pay the ransom or not. And then of course you've got cyber insurance. And even then, with so much going on, cyber insurance organizations, they're getting hit. Also, they're raising the rates and limiting how quickly you've got to be able to remediate your any issues that they discover as well. Cheesy marketing plug, but we do have a ransomware hostage rescue manual. You're welcome to download it. It's free, no charge. just go on out, you can download it. It goes into a lot more detail on the recovery, which I just kind of covered on. Let's talk about prevention. People are a critical layer within the fabric of your cybersecurity program. Again, I'm going back to that comment I made earlier. Humans are the weakest link. No, they're your biggest attack vector. You want to make them a part of it. A lot of folks in the security industry, IT industry are like, no, you know, they don't know what they're doing, you know, but problem is we're still having emails that get by those secure email gateways. They're getting by those filters and landing in people's inboxes. So we can still rely on technology, maybe even to rip them out and prevent users from clicking on them, but they're still ending up in the inboxes and people are unfortunately still clicking on them. So it's important that we get them awareness and understanding and that training so if they do get one of them, they can take the necessary steps. You know, it's a little bit of planning, but baseline testing, go through, train your users, and then continue to phish the users. Don't make it, you know, a once a month thing or once a quarter thing. Make it every week. I know at KnowBe4, I get phished at least 2 or 3 times a week. You know, keeping that awareness, keeping that understanding. A lot of people have a tendency to think that it might be a gotcha moment, but it is actually a teaching moment. Just to kind of give you some perspective on when it comes to the phishing. If you don't do any phishing assessments, you don't do any training in your organization, what we found within healthcare is pretty well 1 in every 3 people in your organization, almost 1 in every 2 within your organization without any training and awareness are going to fall victim to a phishing assessment or a phishing attack. That's a lot of doors. If you got 100 people that work in your organization, that's 50 people opening up the front door to your organization and letting in the cyber criminals, because anybody with an email has access to the internet and has the ability to open up that that proverbial front door. Once you get through doing the training and you start doing some of those assessments, after about 90 days, you knock that number down. That number gets knocked down to about 16%. There we go, about 16%. So now we're like 1 in every 6. So we're reducing that risk, we're improving it. After about a year, you get down below 5%. And here within healthcare, we can see 3.6. So, you know, 1 in every 33 people, you know, you're looking at clicking on that link. So that's a lot easier to manage, 1 in every 33 versus 1 in 3 when it comes to reducing your risk. Over time, you know, that just gets better and it improves, increases productivity. People don't need their machines wiped. It reduces those malware infections, reduces that potential cyber theft that could go on within the organization. And phishing assessments are one part. You've got to go through. There's tip sheets available with regards to social engineering red flags. You can find these on our website. You can go out and Google. But these are 22 questions to go through and ask yourself when you get one of those weird emails. And after a while, you start developing that spider sense. And you can go through and kind of go, you know, there's something weird about it. And then you could go through and check and ask these other questions. I know for me personally, there's 3 questions I always ask. Do I know the person? Am I expecting the email? And are they asking me to do something in a hurried manner? Pretty well, if there's something unfavorable out of one of those, then I'm digging into it a little deeper and I'm looking at it a little more. We always talk about hovering over the links. There's a tip sheet that's available, but we see that they're transposing the characters, you know, instead of Microsoft, it's Microsoft, using in different characters as well. So it's important to make sure we're checking the links. And of course, for those folks, if they're not sure, to make sure that there's some reporting mechanism for them. When it comes to your security awareness training program, think like an attacker, but plan like a marketer. Collaborate. If you've got a PR marketing firm or department within your organization, get with them when it comes to promoting your cybersecurity awareness program, training programs that you have different programs going out at different times. Definitely do different phishing assessments, different times, different groups within the organization throughout the year. Again, don't make it a once a quarter, do it, you know, monthly, weekly events within the organization, you know, whether that's videos, something that's engaging for them, you know, but mixing it up rather than just that one computer-based training along with the phishing assessments and everything else. And if you collaborate with your marketing department, then you get their buy-in. They get some little insight and they hear the stories, and there's that interest as well. You're already going to have buy-in from upper management. Now you got another department. You slowly start working it within the organization and have that buy-in and that interest. That just helps promote it, and you get more evangelists or advocates within the organization that are promoting security and keeping security top of mind. It's a layered defense. it's not just, there's no one silver bullet. And I think a lot of us are already aware that it takes layers, security awareness for the users, as well as the training aspect, and keeping it, growing that security culture within your organization. Some of the success stories that we've had out here. Oh, unfortunately, the animation didn't work, but basically, we've had, what I had here were 3 different organizations that have used KnowBe4, have been successful with it. They've been able to reduce their risk overall within the organization with regards to using the phishing assessment, using the training tool. This is only 3 that I just picked out of one of the tools that are testimonials that we have online. But essentially, it's very easy to set up, very easy to use. We've had a lot of folks have had a lot of success with it. So looking to be able to secure your organization, it's been very widely used, well over several thousands of customers that are using it and have been successful with it in reducing that risk with regards to ransomware. So some final thoughts here in the last couple of minutes. Security isn't cheap, we know that. But security awareness training, I assure you, is probably a lot cheaper than a lot of the technology that's out there. That's my shameless plug and plea for that. But you're looking at, not only is it you're having to pay for the security awareness training, but when you get hit with a ransomware attack, loss of availability, loss of production, loss of profits, plus the ransomware costs, plus those remediations. If there's lawsuits, the unfortunate event that somebody expires during all that because the technology wasn't there to be able to help them. Those are the stories we don't want to hear about. The stories we want to hear about are the success stories of being able to use security awareness, increasing your security culture within your organization to reduce those risks overall. Finally, I'm just real curious if anybody knows how the cyber criminals got away from the FBI. Yeah, they ransomware. So I'll leave you with that, with your head drop or your face palm. I want to thank you for your attention.